You thou transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the one gone beyond the fadeless realm, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in conduct, Siddhartha, knower of the world, physically divine, means to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you who completely
transcendent destroyer, sacred cow, make offerings and go for refuge.
The one gone beyond, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in conduct, means to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you who completely when O supreme amongst human you of all amongst men, you take supreme pure bodies, forms of being impure, crystal motion and best, the logical the supreme time, space like water, smooth, light of all, purified by strength, thus purified to you, welter, correctly wise one, purified by strength, the savior having great compassion, having all understanding, the field of merit and glory forever, you one gone but thus Messiah, the virtue that frees one from all worries, the one path, the sublime realms, pacifies mind with strength, field qualified realization, worthy to the moral precept, very bowing with bodies as many as one thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual revelation, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of false, and be delivered from samsarization, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. To page 15 for the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Various narrow step extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no self-existence, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without oscillation and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisattva. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then Devadatta rose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, Asuras, and Devas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. The short mandala on page 25.
Pöche Janje Method Vira Dingje Nide Gyambadi Sangye Shinde Mile Waji Choko Namla Jenla Jeparasho Salamar Tamba Chinchi Juga Gala Jene Nene Jeda Zame Duje Zema Sake Chuki Chava Ados Guru Rane Mendela Kane Yadaya Sanje Chodon Sochi Chonam No Chanjo Bado Dani Jasu Taki Jejen Jeve Sananji Dola Penche Sanje Chubara Sanje Chodon Sochi Chonam No Chanjo Bado Dani Jasu Taki Jejen Jeve Sananji Dola Penche Sanje Chubara Shedan Soji Chonamla Chanjo Badu Dani Chapsuchi Tagi Jinsu Jive Sonamji Tola Pinche Sanje Druba Shua Kanga Dede Nizave Dawadan Jebawanyi Tameshini Dinze Gudan Dila Chazel Tunye Nye Zande Jobela Jeje Dede Kanje Dinde Chana Bema Dinde Jazala Sawa Dizo Shinde Lundosh Pandenza Lama Ramboje, Dali Ningar Pemme de Jone, Gadenshi Megune, Jizandi, Guzon to Gimoto de Joso. That Gulon, Ringa, the Mundo Jin, Juja, Lam Salam Jinam Shata, Niadi, 심지신 라 펜바 바시 용야 기체드네 아니 닝기여 삼제가 꾸노 드려지 제샤스.
Now, adopt a correct motivation of thinking that this evening we're going to reflect and hear what is expressed by the ornament of clear realization, these topics of grounds and paths, and one is going to reflect on those in order to benefit all sentient beings. Adopt that motivation.
다 가와 강하나 메지디나라 영자 아니 지진 참보 공부 순션 영원도 진지 주자 퇴삼지기 총하데 배 당원에 메지 겨와딜라 겨상보인 삼 가와곰스라.
Think, rejoicing how wonderful, again in this life, I have the opportunity to meet with the protector Maitreya's teaching on these grounds, the ornament of clear realization. How wonderful. Rejoice in that opportunity.
다 농종 곰데스 저라 비딩 exercise 데스 가전한서 곰니 자싱으라.
We are familiar with breathing exercise. Do that for a few minutes.
Now, counting the breath meditation, 21 cycles of inhalations and exhalations.
갑시베게 저자 셴바치와라 당부 아니 티바쳔베 람지 남샤그림바 아니 롭드지 신고요래다 신고를 밥자샤고요래 타과르데 단당 온도지행기 갑제나 갑시스기도 갑제 딩오브제 오브 챵바숨 저와시 되부추고를 마대와자라 다디 람림게 냠렌조다 디제드레스로 미망보제게 슝로 태버치야디 람림 냠렌 멤베서지 지기어 세단도서 슝그네가 하모고니기 계절와스 단다 람림 나라 지 제롬버친 람림 쳔면 나라마 저랑즈 로비나 네 항동 연제라 마 장원도 젠당 네 지 바고 터메기 슝다 드들로 콩독제
맞아요.
수직산 조서지 자대열에 하과르드 이제다 되네 에넬 항동 가돌라다 고몰로들 슝 반데 다와타고 슝라 된로
나를라.
제가 좀 된데지 네 사와다 자초에 남지름 바탐제다 람림나나 두고요래 네 자초에 남지름 바데 단당 온도진지 제기요로.
So, what we are about is this fourth chapter of the 8 chapters of the Ornament of Clear Realization. What does it express, this fourth chapter? What does it say? Well, essentially, it is coming from the context of the Great Vehicle practice, and the way it's set out essentially is in these stages. So looking at these stages of 8, these 8 things we have to know, these 8 categories. So each chapter or section deals with these 8 things or topics. So we have the first 3, which are 3 exalted knowers. And then the 4 applications or trainings we train in to get to those states. And then finally, the last one deals with the resultant state of a Buddha. these 4 corpuses or bodies of a Buddha. Essentially, this is the Lam Rim, although a lot of people don't know this. They will just read the vast scriptures without reading the Lam Rim. But, Lama Tsongkhapa, if you look at the way the Lam Rim Chenmo is set out, all of the parts of the Lam Rim Chenmo up to the Laktong section, or the insight section on special insight, dealing with the profound. All of the Lam Rim up to there is primarily from a Sangha, meaning expressing these ground things, these method things. And then latterly after the Laktong section, or discriminating insight wisdom section of the Lam Rim, we have Nagarjuna's thought of the conqueror's intent on emptiness. So that's how it's very much laid out in the Lam Rim Chenmo. So it's good to know that. Essentially, the Lam Rim Chenmo lays out that.
Ta na lam se de wa sanje ji ko man se de. Nzo sim gi jun ro sim gi jun ta de nzo samlo tang go re. Maran zo tanda sim gi jun de do de ge yor wa da. Pena da ele jaw ngawal ji da ma kesan ge sim gi jun tiring ma do de ge yor ne. 알아서 쌤 기준들라다 곰시로 코육 녀모제야기 코육 유체 이 토체 아니 다 등산 소셜 미디어체 봐 그래서 녀모 저거 제야기 제망고 쇼요라다
오케이
아니 칼라라 제조 쇼유니 그런저 수고게 누가도서 야 뿌용이 누가도서다 녀모제야기 주로 왔다서 녀모가 제제야다 근데 녀모제야기 주디 망고쇼지 차는데 먼저 쌤디 생구 주인들라야 아니 녀모게 콤바슈크 좀 차대요 알아서라 다 강에 모쇼지 용대게 여러 와서 되다 코에 내당 딜레 도사니 딜레 표사당 도사치서 개요 말 코드나 내 사디디 내주디나 대구도 왔어
Yes.
다디 칼레 득죽도 쇠제 수수수수 곰시로 쇠 안에 도도 시제다 나라 수수 셈라 득죽도 쇠제 칼레 곰시로 쇠제 안에 셈디 사로 다나 칼레 지 곰로 자 곰시로 쇠 니 생구 주인데 제산 도제 안에 마음방도 산제게 셈나시 차야 된대 와 용구요 인자 다디 용구여다 매디가 나서 삼로 땅고에 때 용구면은 내가서 갈래자마제 요 말해라. 근데 때 용구면은 나서 베자다야당 곰자야당 투즈 먹고 쉬지 당 시티 지야 참아 투즈 털라로 하다. 다디 용구여디 다자도 버샤제 투가레 디다지 봄볼로도레 파고토메레 아니 별라야당 알아서 단다 믹스 제로 뭐 쳔레 근데 콘라다 안에서 개회신이 뭔가 쇼지 나 단단 거에서 제주에 자오르 마찬가지로 되었다. 뭐네 지 심라 뉴모라 파완 주대베 소르시 뉴모라 파 칼로 주투미 소지 요데 콘저 심 정다션 중된 요지인데 당한저
How to do it. Okay, so now, what this is talking about, today we're going to express these path things in the sense of what are the paths or the modes by which we get to Buddhahood. Well, a path is essentially a mind, isn't it? It's a mind stream. And leave alone past life. Many causes and conditions that affect that mind stream and affect our mind stream, so that we have these afflicted states upon our minds. There are various
prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge.
That could be social media, that could be the fact that we have certain habits that we're habituated to doing, whatever, certainly our minds somehow, in terms of has become habituated and acquainted, with non-virtuous states and afflictions. And because the mind is acquainted with those invalid states of minds or afflictions, the disturbing thought obscurations, we suffer. And the state of being in that suffering premise is what we call cyclic existence, unenlightened birth, aging, sickness, and death, and that's where we are. But now the challenge is, or the question is, to slowly get control over our minds so that we can turn these habits and gain the inner control of the mind. So slowly, we want to clean the mind again and again, and clean and practice, and slowly clean the mind and tame it so that we get to the state of a Buddha. Well, whether we get that or not, that's only going to come if we put in this great effort, tremendous effort. So how do we do that? Why do we do that? If we're not putting in effort, what's the point of all of this study and meditation, knowing that we won't get there without effort? Why are we doing all this? Well, if we think about the masters that have gone before, we think about Buddha, we think about Nagarjuna, we think about Sangha, we think about the Tibetan masters, Lama Tsongkhapa, more immediately the spiritual friends we have, our gurus, His Holiness and so forth. They very much put in tremendous effort and overcame these negative habitual states and afflictions and got the result. How did they do it? They trained.
Jermachin Lujul Kissing Chunan's lawyer. Jermachin Peji Shaway Sumbashi Shanguisera. Karsana Sandi Jusum Sama Taji Tungudo, Danju Lingudo, and Jedong Barwa, Jedong Banimar Tsar Tungudo.
Wow.
Manzo Jedong Ba Lanang Albra Lang and Yumanze Gorgodo, Chuzu Jesco Dongina. 아니, 다 젊은 주주 찍들로 사거래. 주주 찍 제가들로 사거래. 니마레레 제동 사례를 로고래. 아니 안저 단다 산디 지금 다제 뜸범마세 단주링거래로. 제가 깔래 쉽게 보여서 봐. 다 데이터 젊은 다 투럽 줍시난도 아래 당아들로 주듯이 야 같이 다 데이터 대사라. 아선다 저런 머신 지랑서 제림제요. 쇼베슈즈 시바 니발이야 샤니. 곰자다 산디 지숨 다지 투제요나 제버던 거 요송도 단주링 거 요송도 아니 곰 추주 시 숨시가 제고 요송도 곰로 니마질 추주 시가 곰 딘데 제고 요송도 제림 템벤 지나 밀 젠데 제야데 쇼베 추주 주와 잔메시 젠데 칠로 젠데면도
라로
쇼베 추주 니와네 제제 추주 주와 사과 아니 추주 예제직다 쇼저치야다 메도듬라 참잠나야 미시지기 추주 뉘은데지 곰자 깔레지 부여라 간저 체제 가제게고다 다 하고라 먼저 니마지라 추주 가제 곰제고도 베제 가제 때고도 곰 가제게고도 다나 다 다가랑 세브레도
Okay. So then talking about training and putting in that tremendous effort to get the result, the previous masters, if we read the biography of Lama Tsongkhapa, we will understand that he awoke very early in the morning, 3 or 4, and he did the sadhanas of the three great, the great deities, Guya Samaja, Jakasambhava, and Yamataka. Not only doing the sadhanas, but also the self-generations and the initiations as well, which is very thorough. On top of that, he would recite the 8,000 verses of the Prajnaparamita. This Perfection of Wisdom Sutra on emptiness, he would do that once every day, which would take him 1 to 1.5 hours to complete that. So, of course, not only doing the sadhanas, but also the self-generation and so forth. If I do that same 8,000 length of the Prajnaparamita Sutra, it would take me 8 hours. But however, Lama Tsongkhapa did it every day. So therefore now, even more immediately, that was the 14th century. century. That's gone now. But if we look at the more, of course, the living example of His Holiness, we know his schedule pretty well. We know that he wakes at 4 a.m. and
two.
Sumde checker
2
a.m. Yeah, he wakes at 2 a.m. And then if he can, he does the great three, doesn't he? He does Guya Samaja, Chakasambhava, Yamataka, and then he'll do like that self-generation of those sadhanas, and then 4, 5, and 6, he'll do meditation in that morning period. So he'll do that thorough self-practice, and he won't, of course he'll break for breakfast, but he won't meet the people till 10 a.m. And then, he has other things to do, so he won't actually relax and go into his garden till about 2 p.m. Maybe he'll go to the garden at 2 p.m. So if we just look at his example, how he does that intensive study and practice, 7 hours in a day of meditation and study. If we look at that example of His Holiness and compare it to ourselves, it's pretty clear, isn't it? How many hours do we do every day of that thorough practice? Yeah. So when we pray to become just like Shakyamuni Buddha, just like Lama Tsongkhapa, just like His Holiness, well, what we have to remember is they got there out of tremendous effort to get the fruit. But if we're expecting the result without the effort, no, it's not going to occur. Yes.
세직류직 산제 용다래 지난 세직류 산제 별로 망부 중요와 지도멜라 용다래 지도멜라 깔레잼네 산제 베나 레중러와 레중 바도 로마 째다 들어갔다 지금 지도멜라기 로마 탁쇼에 레중 바라 레중 바 당아처럼 당아대요 당아로 아니 지도멜라다 고바 카테갈라벌레 당아난 게 있어 말와 아니 레중 바다 라마람무칭아 저런 당하나야 요새기도 대카드난 거래서는 아니 바 카테갈라거든 디야 쟁고야 디든 디베드 곰전 탁보라고 나신 차 속소제 되네 어디 당하데레 탁갈래 자우레서 데레 당하 어디래도 당하데레도 저저
Kalija. So then if we even read the historical account of Shakyamuni Buddha, we'll see about where his mind was, that his actions when whether he was eating, whether he was walking, whether he was going for alms, whatever, he was totally watching his mind. Other than that, he would be in meditation. So eating was part of his meditation mindfully, and then meditating again, or he would be teaching and then laying down to rest. So we can see from this account so much effort of Shakyamuni Buddha was on the meditation practice, and that's how the result was gained. He showed that. And if we look at the Tibet's great yogi Milarepa, who's kind of well renowned to have achieved the body of a Buddha, one body, one life, as they say. This is commonly known in Tibet. So that came about through tremendous effort. Now his closest heart disciple, probably the strongest, was Rechungpa. And Rechungpa requested Jetsun Miller, can you give me some special instruction about the practice, about how to get quick attainments and so forth? And Milarepa didn't answer immediately, and Rinpoche's almost getting up to leave, and so that's the instruction of the Lama. And then Milarepa says, you want the instruction from the Lama, so he lifted up his robe as Rinpoche was leaving and showed Rinpoche his buttocks, which were extremely calloused and hard. And he said, that's my instruction. Hard effort on the cushion. Now, even closer in the Gelugpa sense, in Sapadang Sure, Tangpodi, Kidrup. Tang? Gyawa Ensapa and Kidrup Losang Gyatso said to have got the body of a Buddha, one body, one life, but how many years they stayed in meditation retreat? 40, 50 years to get it.
제가 다 깔래 잡는 거 쌤디 교도해야 돼. 깔래에서 맞으면 각보래도 가서는 거 곰시디 님바싱에 되게 점지게 믿으서 당한저 쌤 교도 그래서 먼저 쌤디 교도 믿으서 라고다.
Yeah.
먼저 쌤인데 찾아야 돼.
Okay. Okay. Now, without effort, then how's the mind going to change? Well, our habits are kind of quite ingrained. Some people expect quick change, but our habits are like this, like we're bent over and kind of rigid, isn't it? So difficult to get that flexibility.
다이나 그 영야 동산에도 와라. 야 산에도 깔래 잡나 영야도 쌤세디 교도해도 가라. 나는 다 메제나 따나하고 미카시 당보 배 저바 두자 미배 두자 시가 두자 콘도 사고 다시 사고도 제일이야 상당 제일 배 미삼바 상보 배 삼발 흘 십심 시와 차로도 야 미가시 당보 배 삼바 시와 야고 연예도냐 고유 안기 제일 미 저바 배 두자 차로도 팅아랑서 통야도 가 그래서 미가시 대심 지워도 여러 와 심 지워도네 미디 삼바상보도 삼바도자도 사야돼 어디래 다디 심 지워도에 유메디다랑서 삼로 망보 땅도나 네디 개춤보레스도 스라.
So seeing how with effort the mind can change, just as we said, the mind can be like rigid and bent over, it can also become more flexible and open, so that mind can be recorrected, realigned with effort. So we can see this from our life's experience. Some beings are extremely rough in character, bad behavior, angry and so forth, but in the latter parts of their life they become more soft, more subdued, more friendly. We can see this. Conversely, some start out quite good character, kind and so forth, but they turn to become quite ill-intentioned. Yeah.
저는 다운은 심지어 탐랑 가려요래와 다디 가르스나 다 단당한서 온도진 단다 지진 참복 공부게 다 domba jumden dene songba jizu chambo gombo ge ne gyachebe lamjirin ba songshan jodi da zo da ngone gi tablam chedan den bare ne lamji da lam sanje sim yo da ya tablam de la lam se gora lam do kisingma ngazo lam gi tsini shain ba ni jung gi samba choma ma yin be simba de lam gi tsini shain ba kisi dunanga ma tsini shera ro
jo
어디래 다 람 산에 어디래 예스다 단다 지당 람.
So therefore, I mean, the mind can be changed, and no better method exists than this, ornament for clear realization, this teaching by Maitreya, because it is a method. We're trying to have a method by which we traverse to Buddhahood. There would be no better method laid out than this, in the sense of having a method. That's because we have to have a path that we go to Buddhahood upon, develop what's called a clear realizing mind, or a mind that's a clear knower. And as we mentioned the other day, the definition of a path is that person who has conjoined with their mind the uncontrived thought to emerge. So it's a valid path, a valid knower.
니중라로와 니중사리 간랭이와 중어에서는 코랭이와 중어에서다 간랭이와 중어에서 코랭이와 중어에서 코디 말하면서 단다 동해그란 신디 세상 단다 제르모진 제외명의 동해군지 고승고다가 당하란도 코웨기 뉴질이 제레와 파직 롱로버 제샤나 네 동해전자래도 왔다 동해전자 연구도 왔다 당하란도 시험문도 왔다 당하란도 냠뇽메제나라야 제르모진 승고 다래 제외명의 동해군지 고스로 봐 아니 제외명의 동해군지 고 이데미는 시베편조다 시베편조 코웨편조다 이데요만 딱보 템복해요 말했어 그러와 이데요 말했어 내가 족보로도 말해서 그러다 코웨 취되지
So then what type of path is that we've just talked about? This, the person who has an uncontrived thought to emerge. Well, you're emerging from the state of cyclic existence, and it's a definite emergence that you want to be free from that. As Lama Tsongkhapa puts it, that the door to all suffering, is the craving for conditioned existence, isn't it? So we're trying to emerge from that and not make friends with it, but try and reverse it.
다 강예와 중화래서는 당도 코보 라니예와 중화래서 강예와 중 아니 강중예와 중화래서는 타발랑예와 중화 타바드니로 저래서 코발레 타르 타와 어디리다 코발레 타르 타와 딜라야다 타바드니로 어디고요래서 뭐다.
So then the question is, who is it that emerges from this cycle or this unenlightened premise of birth, aging, sickness, and death? It is the person who's practicing the path. So what is the state that's gained therein? It's liberation. So what's the method to gain that state? It is the mind that strives for that liberated state. We have to go for it.
다 강경이와 징그레스드네 다 랑도기 아니 코보라니 아니 타벨라니야 다 당도그레스 거래.
Right. So upon what is it generated? It is generated. The path or the clear knowing is generated in the mind of the person that emerges.
수치당에와 중어레스드 동해 시베고네다. 네 녀와 중고여레스드 저는 좀 된대지. 동해 시베 차세 최당보성에 nen가되고다 데레스으로.
So upon what do we emerge? How do we know to emerge? Well, as Lord Buddha first said, no dissatisfaction, no suffering.
다 동해시에게 동해들라니 동해 동해도서 델레 텐도글로데 파족다 키다 심이다 등로도들래야 요레스와다
당보디라.
동해 텐도요 동해다 동해 텐도기 아니 둔돌래야 요레스와 동해
Now that first, there are three levels of suffering. So the suffering of change, and the compound. That first level, animals, cows, and so forth, they're aware of it. They want to be free of it. They don't want those types of pains.
다 규르베 동해디 대양 텐도에 치료발래요 그래서 봐 치료발 치료발래요 그래서
That second level of suffering, the suffering of change, the non-Buddhists are aware of it and seek to reverse it as well.
제상다 낭베게 동해를 텐도로데 차와두지 동해에서 되면서 차와두지 동해에서 동해게 싸워치지 아니 다 로와 다 동해게 시 사진 여월레 풍부 레뇨 중에 아니 차와두지 동무 차와두체 봤어 봤다 차와스를 코에네가 탐제를 캡된죠 아니 레다 뉴모 두체와 아니 데우디 동해신이지 동해신이 깨워쳐와 남나 리도 콜라 데네 아니 동해다 주외 동해 깨외시 어디 데레데 딜라다 텐도로 제고 여러 칸시야 동해디 차와두지 동해디 시고 여레스다 딘네가 참보래.
Okay. Therein comes a big point now. This third type of suffering, the compound pervasive suffering that is expressed from the point of view of Buddha Dharma, expressed therein because it is the very root of dissatisfaction and suffering. it is the root, and the way it is experienced is to appropriate 5 aggregates that are contaminated. So those 5 aggregates that we take up or attribute are a product of karma and disturbing emotions. And that is the premise of cyclic existence. So then we come to see that the cause of, or the root of that, this compounded pervasive suffering is the ignorance, the karma, and disturbing emotions. And from that very premise of the root, you get the first 2 types of suffering, that of change and suffering of suffering.
네 천대로 무친 송사데 고denchen 왜 쉬어르샤 자와두지 동에데 망고지에다 그 천대로 무친 게 어디 동에 갈서나 빼나 동에 신이 깨외 진실 빼나 먼저 다지 수수 주로와 룰레네 나자 매버체 아니 남시에대야고 아니 칼라단도 다 맨날 단당 가서 있는 기부도 하던다로 봐 나는 정말 기부도 하던다로 봐
Yep.
단다랑 강 누구한테 나랑 안 상마 기워요 그래서
Yes.
다드네 마ध्य음부터가 아니 계제다만다 코와라와다 아니 미기 다만다 통와당 아니 similar 다만다로 제용도 아니 람사 동의 제용도 세상 그 동의 제셔죠 젠테나 동의 제셔죠
about to.
어디를 잡아두지 동의해야 되다 책도 대해서 타고 여인상 다 당하래도 그 전에 그 젠지 태운데 젠 메트도 야 매베서지 와 어디래다 동의 저지 동의해야 되다 데리다
Chedden Rinpoche puts this very nicely, very clearly, this 3rd type of suffering, the compounded pervasive suffering, like this. We might not be sick at the minute. The weather could be good, the food is good, good surroundings, we're happy. But the minute we go outside and we talk to someone or we see something or we think something, then that changes. It's almost like this suffering is just waiting there, about to happen. And Ki chok chok means it's just about somewhere there. It's just about to, the condition is just about to ripen upon us. And Chedden Rinpoche says that is compounded pervasive suffering.
어디래 제자한테 반대추라게 된 송아 두지 동의 라고네 동의 공반이랬어 반대추지라고 사만남되는 두지 동의 라고네서 두지 동의 라고네 동의 공반이도 송스 겨와 두지 동의 라고네 아니 대 공야데 동의 동의 시와 차스 좀 된데 이 동의 시와자 동의 겨와 두지 동의의 시와자 다 시와 차스도 곰 단다 곰 동의 곰사 동의를 곰지체죠. 저 동의 오 가르다 동의 주 가르다 어디시래다. 어디시기요는 동의 곰은이도 송사. 다 동의 시에서야 돼. 동의 곰세대. 양카시에 곰 인지민지 공부 유일로 창말로 야고 진거야 그러면 동의 곰야요는 요몽 곰야요는 곰고 되는데 곰지체발로 고는데 창말 도고라. 어디래?
Chodakwa.
Pandichodak.
Pandichodak invalid, the Pramanavartika states that this compounded pervasive suffering is what we should come to know and be thoroughly acquainted on it by meditating on it, because this was Buddha's intent, meaning that one has to really know the reality of the predicament we're in, the characteristics. It means that you have to know what are the characteristics and attributes of the dissatisfied state. Now, of course, one can meditate on many, many things. Meditating doesn't just mean you focus on a virtuous thing. Here, you take that suffering and you know it. You become thoroughly acquainted with the reality of it. What are the afflicted mental states? How do they occur? And so forth.
코와델라 텐데올로지 딜레타레 타바데올로딜라 따델라 데젠숨 아니 년도지람 란제지람 티진지람 슬람델라 람숨 요체고 레스라.
Now, the way to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, definite emergence, and of course the striving to do so and get the result of a liberated being, that's set out as threefold: the definite emergence or the paths of hearers, the definite emergence or the paths of solitary realizers, and finally the definite emergence of the Mahayana vehicle of the Bodhisattva renunciation
다
as well.
딜라 뒤주 택바숨에서 열어 택바숨생으로 택바숨로
That'll,
택발라데 가서는 강바 콜레야 택바치니 코베나네야 짜바치니들 택바스 강바자스들 강베바 딕스기도
that'll.
견자 토걸르도 견자 눈디나시 콜레야 줘야게 탑딜라 택바스고로 딜라 콜레 드베 탑람딜라네 숨요레스 택바숨.
Now, these are normally termed as the three vehicles. Why vehicles? Because our reality is cyclic existence. In order to become free of it, you have to lift up your feet, like lift up your legs out of it. So it's almost like you are climbing some stairs. So it's a vehicle by which you lift up or lift yourself out of samsara. Therefore, vehicle.
다 년도기 택바 당연히 년도기 택바스도 가르쳤나. 아니 당아 정말 로변 신기 수 암조니 아니 파 로고시야. 대 라니 찍고 콜레 타르베 아니 타와 텐디니니들라 년도지다 택바 년도지 람 년도 로바스 어디샤고 레스타.
What is then the hero vehicle? They will hear the teaching from Buddha or their teacher, and they'll reflect on it and strive for liberation for themselves alone.
다 란제 테볼라도 가서나 당보 라마슈네 네 람기냠len 정말 로면신레 수인네 안 라메 원베 내가블라 밀레 마셰베체 로면신레 마님베체 수수직보 신나지를 곰잡제 네 라니 다좀베 곰마 타바치야 다좀 바스데 뇨몽 바르와 당원에데 뇨몽 바르와 뇨몽 딜라야 네 디 곰니기 람딜라 란제기 람 란제로 파바 다 란제 다좀 바스데 용고요 레스 란제 람세다 란제세 두숑레스.
Right, so now the second of our three vehicles, the solitary realizer, they will hear the path from a teacher, but they will meditate alone. They won't talk about doing it. They will just go or teach it. They will just go and meditate in a solitary manner alone. And they will see the afflictions as the enemy, the inner enemy, and set about to vanquish them, hence the term ahat, or foe destroyer, and they get the result of that.
다 지단도 되셔만 왜 다 단갑디 또 틱징 람디 시기 있어라 틱징라데 택바 첨보스 다 강배 바딕들 첨보라니 찍고 콜레야 타마이 심지 탐제 콜레 타바 지기 있어도네 택바 첨보다 삼로 야첨보 차송아 어디래다.
So we can go into explanations of those first two vehicles in a vast manner, but at this juncture, we're about this third vehicle of the great vehicle. And this is why is this called vast and great? Because one is not just cultivating a valid path, realizer, or consciousness for oneself alone, but one is doing it for each and every sentient being. Therefore, great vehicle.
다 틱징기 나 틱징사데 가르쳐서는 다 라니 지고 동일에 태워면 심지 신 탐제 동일에 태워지기 있을디 닝지 첨보 닝지 첨보 아니 귤라 제바 당 아니 태버 첨보 릭세 심지 탐제 귤라 태버 첨보 릭 요레 산제 릭 요레 다데 딘nen가 직차고래야 릭세 아들와 심지 란신 먼저 심지 란신디 왜세버스 와 먼저 심지 란신디 아니 나산제스메 산제당 심이임베 차네 심세릭 차임베 직벌이 여와요 말했어. 다이나 겨와디 아니 간주심디 마투바들이 산제익심디 투바들이 간주심디 뇨모나 제벌이 산제익심디 뇨모 매바들이 근데 겨와디 쇼선은 미시 심세릭 차임바들라 겨와 매바 인자 아니 간주심디 마홍바 산제 요 인자 아니 제가 산제익 릭사디 심제 탐제라 요레사디 디암베 내가 참보레스로.
Now, a big point here, when we're talking about the great vehicle, it's not just about you. One is focused on all sentient beings without excluding one and generating a mind of great compassion. And this is possible because all beings have within them the class, if you will, or the seed of Buddha nature. You know, the potential themselves to become Buddhas is there. So seeing this now, because and why? Because each and every sentient being's the final mode or nature of their mind is clear light, and understanding that the only difference between a Buddha and us is that the Buddha is abiding in that state of clear light, whereas we are not. So a Buddha has thoroughly subdued his mental continuum. We have not. A Buddha has thoroughly vanquished all of the afflictions and their seeds. We have not. So here we're talking about slowly cleaning our mental continuums of those afflictions and seeds so that we become a Buddha.
야, 다 닝지 고미야가 탑란되는. 저 장죽 쌤 고미야가 탑란되라. 아니 군대 명아 둔지권에 로장 다시 냠지권에 로장 스타딩은 생각망도 준죽다 이제가는 망부도 차로
Baril.
디다 저런 싸워서이나 데스 장국요 레스다.
Now, what about the method for generating the great compassion? We need to generate that. So there's the great compassion which causes the unfabricated mind of bodhicitta. Now, the first method are the 6 causes and 1 effect, the 7-point bodhicitta training. And secondly, equalizing and exchanging self for others. We've been over that a lot, but for those that are new and are not acquainted with it, good to study.
제가 나 닝지 첨불라디 가라고 그러라나. 근데 심지 탐지 동해다 태어났지 말어. 태와 다그 차웠어야 됐다. 텐도다 좀 되게서 텐도 짬만이 봐. 태와다가 좀 되게 닝지 듣고 여러 닝지라 니요를 텐도에 삼바도 좀 되게 삼바서. 제가 먼저 될 학산 닝지 시르다. 학산 닝지 람나 디그레. 간다다 심지 신 탐지 동해 동구 여러와. 동해 텐도에 먼저 지게 여러와. 동해 텐도에 패지 둔두들래 용거래 아직 동해 시도 삼다.
Okay.
둔두게 디 아마도즈 치다디 부구도즈 차르도 디 죽고도 하고 방고를 죽고도 아직 디 차베 동해디 텐도기 고 요아마체 배진 제다고 하실래 좀 되게 치둔둘라 도가다. 저는 먼저 디 디차와디 신고래 되는가지 그래서.
Now that great compassion, what qualifies it? It is 2 things. The sentient beings, first one has the thought, oh, if they were free from suffering and its causes, that would be excellent. But it takes it a step further. I myself will resolve to bring that about. Right? So it's a kyapdugin ningje, meaning that you're actually going to affect that to make it happen. You can actually make it happen on the ground, not just a thought. So then this is often called Laksam Giningje, which really means like the superior resolve, where you're taking the personal responsibility to bring it about. Now, if we look at that first level of compassion, we said it was just that you want beings to be free from suffering. Well, on some level, even animals have that, isn't it? We can see the animal mothers, when they see their younger animals suffering cold, they really feel that. They don't want them to have that. That's just the first level.
이 닝제도 핑곤데 로데라 핑곤데 따데는 닝제 쇼다로.
그래.
그저 학과 자는데 아마디 잘때 부고 드는 셰거다. 디디 베 드즈 닝제와디 두고다 든돌라 닝제와도 하고다로.
That those animals have that loving affection. If we look at the penguins, when there's a tremendous wind, the mothers will stand in front to shield the chicks from the wind. That's a sign that concern is there, compassion is there.
베르다로 아마디 수수 동이디 타메 동이디 수 부구디 깨부다로 할레브레도 하더라.
Well, how those mother penguins take on the cold because they don't want the chicks to suffer, that is there, taking it on.
제가 나 닝지 다나디 칸데스 용거래랍데 당에 등아란서 두균내가서 내 가도 있는데 저랑서 쪽대 년대게 직전에다 망타게 이기를 저랑서 암전난 루야 이나디 개점부 세워지라 수수 예율을 미디 수수 거딘 친구인 바데 상담마도 나나 아니 동의 응원에다 배저 동의 텐드 동의 통과를 봐 아니 동의의 대왕의 지긴 있어야 돼 천의 연통 말다 간다 배거딘 게 상로 최선 쌤 마신 틴틴 있어야 돼 다디 내가 전부 대로 돼다 다 심지 람상 마시 버스 겨왕아지기 다 남샤 kok하고 인자 제 다가라나 수수 편도 가서 여어디 당부 드저 시고야 돼 디마시나나 아니 알아서 닝지 동해디 통고여래 될래 아니 각상살라 동해 태워 속으더라 먼저 동해 태워 써야 돼 가르쳤나다 먼저 수수 예미 미디제 수수 가린 친구 임바당 수수 롱원에 그 제와 여어디 심나라 매번 인자는 어느 동에 터버서고요. 다 간다디. 어두 다 내가 지시를 하지. 균대기 땡중세야디. 제가 셰럽이 또 기타 닝지에 예도를 했어야 돼. 또 내가 데려와. 진 심지신 탐지랑 일 거린 첨부를. 겨왕아지 그 고대연하다는 배심제 탐지랑 마치뇽벌을 파치뇽벌을 써야 돼. 삼당tum는 대야고요. 와다 제산디 다 닝지게야 돌는 언도 배전 최고 닝지 첨부 학산 닝지 써야 들어.
So, it's important for us to be able to put a lot of effort into generating this second quality of the compassion, which is Laksam Ningja, this superior responsibility to make beings free from suffering. I'm sorry to keep going on about compassion all the time, and I go on about it quite a lot, don't I? And I always relate it to those that are close to us. So those that are in our immediate surroundings, those to our left, those to our right. And then think on that, how they've been kind to us. We will be able to see their suffering to some extent. But to what extent are we able to remove it? Well, not really. We can't really do that. We're not so good at that. So if you think on, that's why those first 2 points of seeing the sentient being as like a dear mother, and then within that context, remembering how they're kind, for us is quite difficult at the beginning because then you have to apply it to past lives. Okay, so leave that for a minute. Just think about this life. Just think about the beings you're relating to in this life and seeing their suffering, and we might hear about the difficulties they're going through. So here, what you really have to do is meditate on the kindness of those that are close to you, really immediately, and then develop the wish to free them from that suffering when you hear their stories and so forth. So here, what we're relating is the compassion, but also with the understanding of causality. It is compassion, but it's together with dependent arising. And then we can start to relate it more into that their kindness is not just the span of this life, but the kind father and mother sentient beings have been related to us in past lives as well, dependent arising.
다 디저 ngano 메정어 나는 편도 전부 쉬어도 알아. 초응어 나는 편도 전부 쉬어도 알아.
Karipingidu?
메제나 reality life.
Real life. Yeah.
메정어 간라 편도 전부 도와서 알아.
Yeah. Now these are things that will really benefit us in our direct experiential life circumstance.
만원저 닝지 지도 나는 닝지요 말에. 아니 당연한저 최단 대화면이 속바도 다 인대니로. 당연한저 최단 대화면이 최저 내가 지니래. 닝지 매외 온게 아니 동해 망보 속도.
Yeah.
여러 닝지 디 야부지 요나네 동해디 뇽으로 도서래다 간다라. 저자디 찍들 니네 닝지 곰스다 좀 된데 송도 최망보를 라고 말했어. 찍을 랍샤서. 찍 간신은 닝지 전부인서. 닝지 전부들 랍다 창마데 내용을 했을 텐데. 좀 된데 또 나라던데 송도. 망보라고 말해 찍을 랍. 찍 가르스는 닝지 전부들 랍 송도.
Yes. So how the society we're in needs great compassion, of course. Some are not in a religious group or a dharmic sense. And then you might find that if they're not, and there's not much practice of compassion, that there's much more suffering. So in that light, then, how much more do we need to train in it and cultivate it? So that's one level of great compassion functioning in the world. But secondly, Lord Buddha stated, really it just comes down to one thing. And Lord Buddha said this in Sutra, just train in one thing, and that one thing would be great compassion.
지금 단다디 반대 나와타고야기 닝지 첨보디 토다 파선데 개침배 균생지 오마지고 골라 닝지 첨보라 되자제로와.
좋아 얘기슬라.
어디서 내가 쉬어지래다.
And how wonderful Chandrakirti at the beginning of the entrance to the middle way praises the importance of great compassion, saying that great compassion is indispensable in the beginning, middle, and end. Therefore, at the outset, I bow down to great compassion. It's good to read that.
다른다 지전 참바 공부 도대견나라는데 디 자와 닝제되었으와 장주생의 자와디 닝지심부를 해서 유조디 닝제에서 닝지심부.
And then essentially Maitreya Buddha in the sutra, Ornament of Sutra, states quite clearly that the root or the seed of the unfabricated altruism or bodhicitta is great compassion.
다디 컨데스하고래 라비디 심진신 탐제 동해단 태나 찜마로 동해단 태와 다게 책이 인사 되라다 디삼도 삼보디 레라다 심진신의 제 동해단 태나 찜마로 동해단 태와 다게 책이 인사디 심디 요나 아니 동해단 태와 제가 누가 달아 요마라다 그래서 매일 미 동해 태와 스스 동해 태도 야마라
Yeah.
다 쓸려도 동해 태 누가 쓸려도 Pesha Mangosona Dungi Teduwe. And Zamulina famous Chana Dungi Mission Dungi Tawasuda, the Dungi Tawasuda. That Dungi Dajumekoma, and you call it Hana, call it Dajumekomatamne, Simjin Dungi Teduyoma. That's Sanjay Komatovina. DJ come down over Chita Washington, the Dajatumba Shajetu, Dujamangoda, Tale de was Sanjay Salakota. The Dinza Sanjay Komash Tovina, and in Eda. 심직 된치도 세상 심지 신의 동일의 태외시 뉴버디 산제지 공부도 세상 심지 신 동일의 태외시 땅에 산제지 공부 뉴도 토고도 근데 아니 잔죽 심지 행고도 돼.
So then this twofold aspiration is happening. The first is you focus on sentient beings, and then the thought is how wonderful if they were free from suffering and its causes. But then secondly, this resolve, I myself will do it, I myself will bring it about. Those are the two aspects of compassion. But then if we ask realistically, can I do that at the current juncture? Well, no, I can't. I can't even remove my own suffering, let alone the suffering of other living beings. So therefore, then we have to ask, can money solve the suffering of sentient beings? Can being famous solve the suffering of sentient beings? Can that free them from suffering? Can the arhats who have gotten out of samsara free sentient beings from suffering? Well, no, all of the above cannot. Only a fully awakened one, a Buddha, can do that. So, for example, if we look at the ability of Buddha Shakyamuni, the reason he was able to do that was because he knew the dispositions of each and every sentient being in their entirety, their karmic proclivities and dispositions, seeing their minds as they were. So therefore, then we develop that resolve. Then I must become fully awakened, just like Buddha, quickly, to help the sentient beings. Therefore, that's that great compassionate resolve.
세상다 닝제기 찬주쌤 저단데 대 삼로 딱다 레기도 닝제 삼로 몽보 다나 찬주쌤 삼로 땅 말래 그래.
Yeah. So yeah, really when you understand great compassion thoroughly, you don't have to think a lot. Automatically, bodhicitta comes. It is there.
세상 다 샘제신 동해를 되는 제마로 동해를 되고 딱이 차가이 다 동해를 되고 누워도 산제라도 대지 등에 산제지 고마 토와치기 아니 잔죽 샘 신이 상화돼 다 배전신이 깨와들라 쪼마식으로 쪼마 많이 봤어 당한도 당부 배전신이 깨고라라 삼루다 배전신 깔라지 치즈 아니 곰인데 아주 독지 세트 머신 성으로 독지 죽어도 하나친구도 현안시 애니베 망아 슈슈이 샘제기 된 지하실 산재 공부 뉴드 토고도 대면시 탑신신다 민두성 로데 왜 가도 있네다 개용거로 안 되기도 로도 닝도 아니 배용거로 다 간다로 다들 잔주심 도마 좀 많이 미게나 아니 대신 그 전람자들 다 쇼래 대신 남로 쇼르다.
So therefore, that those, understanding that with the great compassion, the bodhicitta will become automatic for you. First, the thought to free beings from suffering. Secondly, the resolve to do that oneself, taking the personal universal resolve. And then thirdly, understanding that only a Buddha can do that. So then one puts effort into becoming a Buddha. Well, right there alone, those three things are the causes of bodhicitta. Of course, initially we have to fabricate it. We have to put effort into it. But then ultimately, more long term, we meditate, familiar, and it becomes unfabricated. It's like, when you're always hungry, you get an empty stomach and you want to eat. So you satisfy that desire. You want to get the resolve to make it automatic. So therefore, what comes there is not only this quickness, you quickly want to become a Buddha, but also comes tremendous bravery, or logo chimbu means courage. And then it starts to become more unfabricated. Now, when it gets to the stage of being spontaneous or uncontrived, then you've generated in your mind the first path of the Mahayana, which is the Mahayana path of accumulation, the uncontrived bodhicitta.
시다한테 된중원도진 선제 받은 신도치 양다조의 천주도 성도
Yeah.
다 샘제 샘제 용어셔와 돈번년된 이 샘제에서 신도와 신도 등이도 뭐 천주 등이도 신도에서도 샘제 신탐제 동의를 태워라 거요 뒤뒤 신도 등이도 뭐라 대시도 라니 조의 산지 고마 토바치에서 란도 등이도 뭐라 제가 디케주니 상고도데 어디 샘제 용어도 쉐어다 등원도잖아.
Yeah, so as it states quite clearly in Ornament for Clear Realization, know that the definition of bodhicitta is, on a causal level, the benefiting intention, and secondly, striving for Buddhahood itself. Know that bodhicitta has made up of two aspirations or two aspects. Let's look at this first aspect. The first aspect, the wish to free all beings from suffering, totally focused on other living beings. The second aspect, the fact that you are striving to become a Buddha, that's for your own ends. So therefore, straight away, the twofold intentions or aspects make up that bodhicitta definition.
다 될라야 아니 샘지 다 장주그 샘 통화제 바탕 아니 디징 소름 터와 아니 개베세샤 다 개베세샤 아니 수다 초법 다 개세 다 초주 개버세단 제벽에 초법에서 유차로 거래 봐 개세 장주 샘 바사야 차로다 봐
Now, once one generates that uncontrived mind of bodhicitta, or generates the first of the five paths, the path of accumulation of a Mahayanist, you become a child of the Buddhas, and straight away there, being in that lineage of the Buddha's offspring, if you will, or children, you're an object worthy of offering.
다 디징 초람 람델라 디징 초람 조람 토람 공람 밀로람 시지 람가샤로
Right, we know then, and if people have got the sheet, it would be good. We know then that there are these five paths, five Mahayana paths. The Mahayana path of accumulation, the Mahayana path of preparation, the Mahayana path of seeing, the path of meditation, and finally, the Mahayana path of no more learning.
다 디네 디징 초람스 내가라 아니 다 산제지 고마 뉴드 토고도 산제 고마 토발라 가르쳐 코어방거로 와 코어방올라 아니 코베자오방거로 코베자오 가래 디무디지 마리고래 다 데라 디무디지 마리고 방올라 장주심다 닝지 쳔베고 디무디지 마리고 본도고 말해 참소모단 게메지 신디니가 차주면서도 참만남데나 참바다 닝질라 아니 닝질라서고 대다 아니 디무딘지 애니 매와 좀지 그니뭐 말해서 김전 가르스나 군이 미국에와 말해서 세상 디무딘지 마리베 코베자와 본야게 탈람디다 돈이도 고요라 돈이 그 슝라 퇴바치 삼바치 공바치 받을라 아니 디네가라 퇴선 공수 집에 내가 달라 디징 그 사람 중우 딩 첨보스 중우디 퇴바치 딩디 삼중제 아니 첨보디 아니 공중질로 다 공중집에 내가 달라 퇴선 공성기 라자네 두 사람 친든 주선 될라자나 코든 야가 도와라
Now on this first path of the Mahayana path of accumulation, here you've freshly generated a resolve to get to the state of Buddhahood. But you know that as long as you grasp ignorantly at things being truly existent, you won't cut the root of samsara. You won't be able to reverse that unenlightened premise of clinging to objects being truly existent, which is an incorrect clinging or incorrect apprehension. And you know that even though you will have generated loving kindness and great compassion, as it says in the text, this does not act as an actual antidote to the root of samsara, the ignorance grasping at true existence. So therefore, this practitioner will set about on the path of accumulation to cultivate the wisdom consciousness realizing emptiness. So how will they do that? Well, there's a small, medium, and great level of the path of accumulation, and they will respectively hear about wisdom initially, reflect on it in the middling stages, and then meditate on the great stages. So hearing, reflecting, and meditating on insight into emptiness, small, medium, great.
다드네 손랑 치면내가 돈이름이 kumjunjilo tawada ani tijin jolam thole ya photo ra.
Now that practitioner with an inferential insight into emptiness at the great stage of the path, Mahayana path of accumulation, then traverses with that momentum or familiarity with emptiness to the path of preparation, the heat level, the second of our 5 paths.
제가다 tijin jolam 돈이라 다 jolam들 태용원도 세거라. 이제 다다 디 이제 차든 세거다. jolam라라. 아니 jolam들 태용원도 세다 돈이라 미게 kumjunjilo tawa 인자 다디 딘데서기 라겨라.
Okay.
돈이름이 kumjunjilo tawi인데 아니 tijin jolam스디 칼라스나 다 산지엑살로 좋아서 돈이 무슨 더왜 람들라 무엇을 다 반저바치에 람 솔람세도 저 소남지 초다 초사베 내가 버지를 권한디기요로 졸람지 내가 수다 돈이 무슨 더 벌어야 도보 저도고 여러 제가 졸람들라 트 제모스와 최저 트라데 칼라와스나다 먼저 베나 치로라 메도이나 어디 메기 트디 리그로 어디 페 메유서레 사구당데 인자 메 트디 요도 요도 트여베 인자 니메그 트레레온데다 니마샤용도 세거당 알아서 디나시 메그 트여베네 메요와 하구다 디나시 땅에 돈이 무슨 도부 조고 도사레 삼 미칸산디 다 돈이르메 kumjul로 터차로 땅에 돈이 무슨 도부 도사레 삼베 딩줄레기요레 델라야 졸람 트여스거다.
Now, on this second path of the Mahayana path of preparation, the definition of it is a Mahayanist who's a clear realizer of meaning. So a Mahayana clear realizer of meaning. Why meaning? Because at this stage, the practitioner, he or she has become acquainted with the understanding of emptiness and is starting to understand it, starting to understand that emptiness. Initially, on the path of accumulation, they were just a Mahayana clear realizer, but at this stage, the meaning is becoming more clear, the meaning of emptiness is becoming more familiar, and they're training with it. They're training so that soon their understanding will no longer be conceptual, but it'll start to be non-conceptual. So reminding us that why is this first level heat? Because they're getting warmer, just as we would say the sun shines and we get warm if we're close to a body of heat. Similarly, they know that they're quickly going to get it. They're quickly going to get that non-conceptual cognition of reality. So therefore, they're coming closer.
저런 트여시 다드네 제몰랍디 콜라오르스나 록다기 게서 쯤이니 왜 띵토고요. 다 메신다기 레준데요 말이 정하지요 말 가르람나 숨 투게요 말다. 록다지요 말다. 심지어 언제 가시 다 레준데에서 말다 미카시 지지기는 다 딜레다 엔터테이닝 다로 차라던가 러시아 나 안에 숨 투게 아니 셰다 딘델 로고도 하고서 디 가르서는 아주 심 템포요 말다. 저런 그 제모톱도 미 가르시에나 야야야 다 저한테 죽당항 알아 도사 예스라 아니 랑룩 템포 차도요. 수수 셈데 랑룩선 딩저로 템부터 미 가르람나 유바당도 말이지 시간조 람산 찍라우다 유니라우다 유로다 예다 졸람 저 제모네 갑수다 미기 레준데 요마르라나 이지 지금 말에 경어지 요마르나 군조스미 요마레 다 대지 겨와첸 초 요마레 텔레스스 깔레제 기부당 람나 가시 이지 지기도 하대 아니 다디 인사레 다텔레 스스 기부당 대고다 아니 초 마마마마마 쇼도 아니 안다질라 초초는 면요지 차로다 제단데 다 제모 탑도 된데 록다게 계자 줘야겠다 디 딩즈 토고였다.
Now, this second level of the Mahayana path of preparation peak, here one's understanding cannot be swayed. One is very stable, so stable in fact that one cannot be influenced by others. If someone were to say, oh, there's no cause and effect, there's no past lives, there's no three jewels, without a stability you could be swayed by that. At this stage, such a person can no longer be swayed, starting to get to where they can't lose their roots of virtue, by being affected by someone that could mislead them. So if you could be affected by someone that misleads you, which says, oh, you don't need to worry about practice or the past lives or cause and effect, just be happy, then our stream of Dharma could dry up. But at this level, for this practitioner, that can no longer happen.
뭐 서버서야 돼. 땅강에서는 계산 말해서 딩줄래.
that'll.
서동에서 요면을 땅강에서는 계산 말해서 딩줄 토고요.
Now the strength of forbearance is that you have the conviction that you will no longer be born in the lower migration.
세상단다 가담 계시 라르 탕바다. 아니 가담 계시 가래 찍다 되줄라. 이래다 베진 저도 가담 계시는 당보다 용다라고 시래 지단 근데 좀람 쇠토바 인사로 쇠바도 토바 인사로 제자 답에서서 nga ngisonle jesa mare nge melam dumaso nga ngisonle jewasho nga nyawala jewasho nga simji shinda chode nga ni nyawala jewasho nga dungye nyansala jewasho nga ngisonle jewasho melam jeguye nge melam dumendo nga ngisonle jesa mare jesa duzu dingze dingyo jolam 뭐 서버터에 따래도와디
So the signs that one will not take the lower migration, that the mind has become stable therein. We know the story of Geshe Tampa, who was about to pass away and said to his attendants, it looks like I'm not going to get my aspiration now, and that I'd made so many aspirations to help the beings in the hell realms, help the beings in the lower realms. Oh, but my aspirations are not coming to fruition. And he almost looked like he was sad at that. So this is a sign that he had reached this level of the path of preparation.
그 주어도 삼나 직된 버스게 뭐라 미다고이나 아니 산제 직된 버 차도로 산제 미다고로 가셔서 이나야 그 님부터
알레 님부터
파좀이야 요가들 직된 버스 직된 버 제단 직된 배 추고 초
님부터 님몽 기본 되네 왜
님부터 매우서요
알레
어다고 좀이요
엔티도
될 직된 버스 직된 근데 직된 배 추고 초다 계진이와 돈이 무슨 또로 거다 내가 그죠.
Now this fourth level of the path of Mahayana path of preparation, supermundane qualities. Why called supermundane? Here one is going beyond the mundane sense of Jigtin, this temporal world. Now, not in the sense that it's impermanent, because a Buddha is also a product of impermanence, but impermanence in the sense that you can apply an antidote to it and it can be overcome. So that sense of impermanence, so that after the last moment of this stage of the path of preparation, one gets to the path of seeing or direct insight into emptiness.
다지네 계진이와들라 돈이 무슨도 남도가 당 아니 통남세 차례 태용원도 세다 태용원도 댐방원도 스도 다 댐바사도 동번이체 아니 댐바사도 통 될라 아니 통남세다
That next moment, when the practitioner has a direct insight or a perception of reality, not a conception, then they get the path of seeing. They cultivate what's called a Mahayana clear realizer of truth, which is the definition of the path of seeing. So at that stage of directly realizing the truth, we'll break off for today. It's a good auspicious place to get up, break off, isn't it? Any questions from the friends online?
Oh yeah, that is how. Yeah.
Yeah, page 31 of the short note.
Sangye shingdo mete wa ye tokunanda shenla joba sho
Sera denshi nanga tenle joju moma
Guru Ratnamanda
Kamniyatayami.
Phrase of dedication.
Transactions.
I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with a dedication praised as the best, by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of
Dharma and Sankalpa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified and all the conducive circumstances be complete. Wish granting, wish fulfilling joy, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech.
May all your
holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Saviors.
Snowland teachings and transmigratory beings. It makes extremely clear the path of the unification of emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech. May all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduous moral way, who serves the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining and preserving and spreading unto us victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long, by relying on the 2 accumulations of myself and others in the 3 times. May the teaching of the conqueror Laksam place for a long time.
어디 랑 디어라 다리 랑종 곰게